Here we are. I think this is Pete's 2 Cents, episode number 5 now, guys. So I hope you're enjoying it. I've had a lot of feedback from you guys saying that it was, a nice little change. You get to kind of hang out with me, grab a drink, do your chores around the house, commute to work, all that sort of stuff, and that you're enjoying these episodes. So, yeah, thanks for those of you who sent emails and feedback and everything. And thanks to everyone who is on Instagram asking me questions every Monday. So let me open up Instagram. I've probably got a few things that I can rant about before we get into the questions. There's actually a few that I'm going to rant about that was sent in. Just have to find them. The worst thing in the world is when you've put these question stories up, and when the story disappears, it's so hard to find them again. The questions. Okay, I've got a list in front of me here. Alrighty. Okay. What's news? So I've got a mug of coffee in front of me. Let me have a sip. Sorry about that, guys. It's still hot, so it's kind of have to sip it. And it has soy milk in it instead of dairy milk. This reminds me so much of when I was a kid. I grew up drinking soy milk all the time. For whatever reason, my parents decided, they preferred soy milk to cow's milk. And so for a long time, I think even till I was in my teens, I didn't really have cow's milk unless it was in something like a milkshake or, any other dairy products, cheese or yogurt or ice cream, that sort of stuff. But I am back to soy milk. Now, there's a bit of a story behind this, which is what I thought I would share with you guys. So I can't remember how much I've told you and in which episodes. We went down to Apollo Bay, right? You'll remember that. I've talked about that. And yeah, I'm still editing those little vlogs that I said I was going to do. I've done one. I just have to add in some of the images and everything on it. So we went down there, and a few times I woke up and my back was just fucking killing me. It was just wrecking me. I couldn't believe it in the mornings. And initially I thought, Jesus, lower back pain. I probably twisted myself, putting the kids in the car or pulling them out of the car, picking them up, and I've just torn something. But the weird thing was that the pain got better throughout the day. And then at night, it would just get worse until when I woke up in the morning and it'd be absolutely brutal. Different kind of pain that I hadn't felt before. I could kind of move and everything, but it was just the sort of stinging soreness was just brutal. So when I was down in Apollo Bay with a family, that was when it became its worst. So it had been sort of hanging around for a week or two prior to that. And then whilst at Apollo Bay, it was almost debilitating. And when I got up, it would have been the second or third day we were there, I could barely move. And the weird thing was when I stood up straight, it was fine. I couldn't, it didn't hurt. But bending forward, twisting, anything like that instantly made me regret the decision to do that. So I went and saw a doctor, my doctor in Ocean Grove. Shout out to Justin. Thanks for the feedback and the advice and help. So I went and saw him. And he's like, could be anything, could be mechanical, could be arthritic, could be inflammation of some kind. We'll just have to do a blood test to just double check that it's not some kind of, rheumatoid arthritis or any other number of things, nerve damage. I don't think you'd get that from the blood test, but it didn't seem to be nerve damage or anything like that, a slipped disc or whatever, not sciatica. And I hate blood tests. I think you guys probably know, and you've probably had a laugh a few times at just, how much I can watch other people getting them. I can watch other people getting injected. I can watch, videos of surgery and that sort of stuff. But when it comes to it happening to me, it just freaks me out. I'm just definitely not a big fan of having my blood taken. So I went into the it'd be called, what's it called? Clinical labs. Clinical labs is what they're the place that you go to do blood tests, pee tests. You hand in, poop tests, anything that they're testing parts of your body or whatever, like the liquids and fluids and everything for diseases. That's where you tend to go. So I went there, and the lady brought me into the office and was like, "Oh, have a seat in the chair and I'll take your blood." And I was like, "Yeah, you're going to need to lie me down." Because the last time I had it taken in a chair like this, I passed out. And it's so embarrassing every time I'm having to say that, but better than them having to pick me up off the floor when I've, been too proud to tell them that I get low blood pressure all of a sudden and pass out. So they took me into the other room, Sorry, have another sip. And lay me down on the bed and, took the vials of blood, took quite a few, 3 or 4 of them, I think, because of all the different tests they were doing. And I had to do a piss test, a pee test. I had to give them a urine sample. But I couldn't. I'd woken up that morning, so I had to do it fasted, right? I had to do it before I'd eaten anything for the day so that they could get a base level of my blood glucose, cholesterol, all the other stuff in my blood. So I was starving. I was really hungry. And I'd woken up that morning and gone to the toilet, had nothing in the chamber, nothing waiting to come out, and so I had to go home. I was like, "Can you give me a little container and I'll do it at home and bring it back later because it's just not going to happen here and I'm just holding up the line." So went home, did that, came back later, gave it to them, and then my doctor got the results a few days later and was like, "Oh, come in and see me on Monday. It's non-urgent, but come and see me." And I was like, "Oh, here we go. So I go in. This was yesterday, at least from the point of time where I'm recording this, it was yesterday. And he sat me down and he's like, "Your cholesterol's off the roof, off the charts. It's it's the bad cholesterol is up there, And he's like, "What's your diet like?" Interestingly, I just started the ketosis diet, the keto diet, right? I not strictly keto in terms of it being really, really high fat, but my wife and I had kind of cut out all the bad carbs, the processed carbs and everything from our diet. So we weren't eating things like bread or rice or, all the stuff that's not necessarily very good for you if you're trying to lose weight. I think I'm the kind of person who's susceptible to putting on weight if I eat a lot of carbohydrates. So that was why. And I've done keto in the past. I did it for a year and, had amazing results. Anyway, so we were trying to do that, and I've been eating, red meat with fat on it, lots of cheese, some salami and ham and all those sorts of things. And as always, I drink a lot of milk with all the coffees and everything that I have. And what else? Yogurts, ice cream, loads of stuff that have effectively saturated fat in them, which is, it contributes to you having high cholesterol, the bad type, the small LDL cholesterol, which infiltrates your arteries, among other things in your body when you have too much of it, and causes plaque buildup, calcification. I think plaque sort of build up inside the arteries, and ultimately, you can end up having a blood clot, having a stroke, or having a heart attack if it's not dealt with. And this is a sort of chronic sort of inflammatory issue that you can have for decades, not know about it, and then all of a sudden you drop dead. So he was like, "Look, you're not going to die tomorrow, but if you don't get this sorted out and you don't deal with the cholesterol, you're probably going to have a heart attack in 10 or 20 years if you were to just keep going the way you're going." So that kind of was a big warning shot. I was just like, shit, holy shit. Was not expecting to get that kind of news. I was expecting to come in and for him to say, your back issues related to this thing that's, a marker of inflammation or something. So we're going to put you on some medication for that and it'll disappear. Anyway, so he's like, "Look, you're below the normal level where we start giving medication, but only just. So we'll wait 3 months, see if you can clean your diet up and we'll see if that changes anything. And if not, you're on a statin for the rest of your life." And I was like, okay, shit. Okay. Full disclosure to you guys, I have been on antidepressants. I think it's called Prozac. I guess it'd be Prozac. It's got a bunch of different names depending on who's making the drug, but it's effectively Prozac. I've been on antidepressants for about 10 years now, maybe. And it's one of those things. I got on them because I had a bad period when I was studying my master's degree. It was a really difficult time. My mum had breast cancer. She's, fine now, but at the time it was pretty stressful. I was in debt trying to pay off a BMW that I'd bought that had just been a total nightmare and cost me an arm and a leg to fix. This guy up in Melbourne sold it to me and it was a lemon. It was totally cactus. The head gasket had blown and he didn't tell me. And, fair's fair. I should have had it checked, but effectively, this is something that is it's the seal on top of the block, I believe, inside the engine of the car. And it's not necessarily that the seal is expensive to replace, but the amount of labor they have to take out the entire engine and effectively pull it apart. The car ended up costing me like $6,000 in the first few months. So I was getting crushed under that. And at the same time, my ex-girlfriend, or my girlfriend at the time that I ended up breaking up with, shacked up with my best friend since I was, in high school. So he moved in with her within days of us breaking up and was living with my 3 best friends. So dealing with all of that, I ended up getting onto Prozac to kind of mellow out my depression or, the mood issues that I was having at the time, and had stayed on them for, 10 years, just because it became one of those things of every time I'd go and see the doctor, they'd say, oh, you can get off them if you want, but if you've got big life things happening, you probably don't want to just jump off them. Do it when everything's kind of, smooth sailing. And that's almost never the case, right? There's always something going on that's stressful. So, it was finishing the master's or starting my PhD, my doctorate, and then, having children or having a pregnant wife, and then having one child and then having another child. And so there was always a reason to kind of stay on them. I probably could have kept going because, to be honest, I'd had no side effects from these drugs. And even if they weren't, if there was no side effect, they didn't really affect me on day-to-day life. It didn't really bother me. No real long-term effects as far as I know. You guys are doctors out there and everything. You could probably set the record straight if I'm incorrect, but that was what I understood. Anyway, long story short, I got off those recently. I was just like, you know what? I ran out of the pills and my prescription was up, and I was like, I can't be fucked going to the doctor just to get another prescription for this drug that I probably don't need to be on, so I'm just going to try and clean myself up and, get off the drugs. So I was really proud, did that. It was sort of like a little bit up and down for a week or so, mood-wise, as my serotonin levels started sorting themselves out. That's what the drug does. Effectively, it inhibits serotonin uptake in your body so that you have high levels of serotonin than usual in your system going around in your blood and your brain, everywhere else. And it leads to an improved mood, right? That's how effectively SSRI, serotonin, I don't know what the thing is, reuptake inhibitor, SSRI, antidepressants, that's how they work. So I got off those, sort of up and down for a bit, and then felt great and was really happy to be off drugs, only to go back and find out that I've got high cholesterol now and have to try and sort that out. But it's been funny. I'm kind of very, I'm not afraid of sort of diving in and learning about these sorts of things and trying to solve this problem. You guys will probably know by now, I'm the sort of person who's in for a penny, in for a pound, right? Kind of all out, just do it. Go in, do as best you can, do everything. And so last night I spent about 3 or 4 hours researching the kinds of foods that I should be eating, what I need to do for my diet in order to clean it up and hopefully bring the cholesterol down as best I can in the next 3 months. And I guess before I tell you a little bit about, the stuff that I have to now consume as a sort of experiment to see if this works. And I'm mentioning this for you because, I know that it's sort of private information, but to be honest, you guys know me. I'm a bit of an open book. I'll tell you pretty much everything and everything about my life, because I'm hoping that, one, you find it interesting and it'll help you learn English, but also that if you face any of these sorts of issues yourself, it's helpful. Just had a brain fart. I can't remember where I was going with this. What was I doing? So, I was talking about researching this. So, one of the things that you got to be careful with when researching medical things like this is the number of snake oil salesmen online that aren't medical practitioners or scientists who make blog posts and videos and everything telling you just do these 3 things or 10 things to do. And there is so much of that shit online. Like, I kid you not, for medical things where the person will say at the start, I'm not a doctor, but, and then dive into these things. Doctors listening to this, and nurses probably, anyone who's a medical professional is probably going to be aware of this sort of stuff, and it's infuriating, right? So the first things first, when I started researching this stuff, I was looking for actual doctors. If I was going to look up anything on YouTube, it would be that I wanted a healthcare professional talking about this thing. I didn't really care about anyone else and their personal stories when it comes to medicine. It needs to be a professional. The other thing was looking online and using websites like WebMD and especially Google Scholar. You guys can access Google Scholar. It's effectively a search engine for scientific publications, but anyone can access it, and many of the publications are free to access. This is where I tend to go as a scientist to look for evidence for things like the foods that I was going to consume. I wanted to make sure that studies had actually been done, potentially multiple studies, and had shown that there was at least a correlation, whether or not they could work out causation, A equals B or A causes B. I wanted to make sure that dietarily there was some sort of scientific evidence behind it. So be aware when you go and search these sorts of things online, if they're just bullshit articles listing 10 things that you need to eat, the person isn't a doctor, they have no references or citations, with these are the scientific articles backing up the claim that I've just made about what you need to do, what you need to consume, blah, blah, blah. Be very careful because, even some of the doctors out there were giving advice. One of them was talking about how it was important to drink red wine. And I was like, mate, this has been debunked so many times because let me see if I can find what they're after. Red wine has a certain thing in it. Why is red wine healthy? Let's see what comes up if I say that. Healthier than white. Let's see what happens. There's a certain chemical in red wine. I'm trying to look for the name of it. And it's meant to be a powerful antioxidant. Here we go. Red wine contains a high level of the polyphenol resveratrol. Okay, that sounds like it is probably what they're talking about. So polyphenols, yeah, these are the antioxidants in red wine. So polyphenol resveratrol, Jesus, that's hard, in red wine versus walnuts. And I think you guys are going to see where I'm going with this. From what I understand, the case that you often hear from people about red wine being healthy is that it has these polyphenols and in particular resveratrol. What else has it got here? Anthocyanins, catechins, these antioxidants in red wine, right? That's meant to be the selling point, that red wine's good for you because it has these antioxidants in it. The thing they never mention is the fact that you can get these antioxidants from other areas, other foods, other things you can consume that don't have alcohol in them. And from memory, I'll have to look at this. What am I going to type in? Antioxidants, red wine versus walnuts. So what have I got here? Metabolism of antioxidant and chemopreventative. Jesus, some of these words. Elegitannins from strawberries, raspberries, walnuts, and oak-aged wine. Yeah, so effectively what I was trying to say is that walnuts apparently have, I think it was something like 20 times the amount of these antioxidants compared to wine, red wine specifically. So if you're worried about that sort of stuff, probably just eat the walnuts. Anyway, this doctor that I was watching that was referring to some of these things that were really good for you to consume if you want to bring down your LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, he said red wine and didn't mention walnuts. And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me, mate? Like, how are you that out of... You're a freaking doctor. You should know better than to just say red wine and not even mention why and not mention the other sources of the exact same thing that is in red wine that would be healthier to eat if you're, eating chocolate, coffee, walnuts compared to having red wine with alcohol in it. Anyway, rant over. So yeah, I went on a kind of a binge. I went down a rabbit hole online looking for as much as I could about what to consume, what I needed to remove from my diet, which if you have high cholesterol, again, I should probably say I'm not a healthcare professional. What I'm telling you right now is just anecdotal. It's what I've sort of come across online doing my research. If you have any sorts of medical issues whatsoever, please go and see your doctor and talk to them about this sort of stuff. I'm just telling you this as something to think about, right? You do not follow my this isn't advice. Don't follow what I say here, okay? I'm just telling you what I did. Anyway, so I jumped online, got into some of these scientific articles, was reading about things like garlic and lemon and oatmeal and psyllium husk, soy protein, and plant sterols and stanols. So these are effectively the equivalent of cholesterol, the fatty substance in animals that is found in plants. And so I was doing a lot of reading on these things and then cross-referencing things. So trying to find multiple studies that supported the same finding as other studies. So say, there was one study saying that if you have a clove of garlic and a tablespoon of lemon on a daily basis, you can reduce your LDL cholesterol levels by 10%. And so I was looking for other studies and other evidence that this was the case. And so that's a big point too. Whenever you find this kind of information online, if you ever look stuff up, you have to be really good at critical thinking and logic, but also how to evaluate that good information. Where's it coming from? Who's the person delivering this? Do they have biases? Are they trying to sell me something? Which this doctor, by the way, was. He was constantly selling his supplements. So again, red flag. Even if it's a doctor, a lot of the time, if they're straight away telling you, I have this exact product that will solve this exact thing, it may be the case that it helps, but he instantly has a motivation to do that thing, right? There's a conflict of interest is what I want to say. So yeah, weighing up that evidence, trying to find multiple things that support the same finding. So I've changed up my diet in a few ways. Firstly, I've tried to get rid of everything with saturated fat in it, or at least, as much of it as possible. You can't really eliminate everything that has saturated fat, but that's going to be the key. Having another sip. That's going to be the key to helping my cholesterol come down if it's caused environmentally. If it's the diet that is causing my cholesterol to increase, then removing those things with saturated fat, so things like dairy, butter, milk, yogurt, any of those meats that have a lot of fat on them, like rump cap. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be having any picanha anytime soon, at least not with the cap on it. And switching to vegetable oils and vegetable fats, if you will, like the equivalent of fat, but in veggies. So using those sorts of things instead. And then all these other things, effectively higher fiber, soluble fiber. My wife laughed at me. I went to the pharmacy today and bought a bunch of fish oil. The other thing was, what have I got here? It was kyolic. So I think it's like kyolic. So that's like a dried garlic in a pill that you can take. Fish oil, that, and then Metamucil. And Metamucil has a reputation for being for people who have constipation, right? They can't pass their stool, if I were to use something more, medical. They can't poo very easily because the poo is really hard and it's not moving through their digestive system easily. And so quite often they'll drink things like Metamucil, which is psyllium husk that's been ground up, really high in fiber, soluble fiber, mixes with water, and it kind of sucks up the fat that's in your digestive system and you pass it through you. So having a lot more of that is hopefully going to do the trick. And I'm eating things like beans, peas, lentils, apples. I'm having oatmeal now, sort of like a porridge in the morning with, again, lots of fiber, and putting in flaxseed powder. Again, same thing. I think it's just got loads of fiber in it. And then I've switched milk for soy. I'm going to probably try and have tofu as well. See how this goes, guys. But this is going to be the trade-off for me, I think. If I do manage to bring my cholesterol down, especially obviously the bad cholesterol, the LDL, the small cholesterol, if I can bring that down over the next 3 months, it's obviously dietary. If I can't, it's obviously genetic. And the other issue is when the doctor was asking me, he's like, I'm pretty sure that this isn't dietary. You're not morbidly obese. You've got a little bit of weight that you could lose, but you're not morbidly obese. So I don't think diet's going to really change anything. This is going to be genetic. And he was like, do you have any family members who are on statins? And I was like, oh, shit. My dad is. His cousin is. I think my dad's mum was, so it's more than likely a genetic thing. And I'm going to have to end up on statins probably for the rest of my life if that's the case. So I guess we will see how we go, guys. I guess we will see how we go. But anyway, I hope you don't mind me talking about this. I don't mind sharing it. I don't mind talking about this stuff with you guys because, one, I think you're going to get a lot of vocab out of just, what I just talked about. Jesus, the amount of terms in there related to medicine and nutrition and everything. And two, if you have these sorts of issues, obviously go and get them checked out and then do your due diligence, talk to your doctor and try and make the adjustments to live a healthier and longer life. And that was the thing. I had no idea about my cholesterol, to be honest. I am glad that I had that checked. So again, if you guys are needing blood tests anytime soon or even worried about this sort of thing, go and talk to your doctor and just get a cholesterol test. So, I was meant to be looking at the back issues that I was having and he said, do you want to just check your cholesterol while we're here? And I was like, yeah, I really don't, but I don't want any more blood taken than I have to because I'll probably pass out. But you know what? I need to do it. It's for my own good. It's for my own health. My family rely on me. So I have a sort of a responsibility to take care of myself. So that's where we're at. And yeah, I guess that was the thing. I don't know if I said, it's going to be interesting to see if I can maintain this diet. If it is dietary and it does make a difference and it brings my cholesterol down into the healthy range. The other thing is am I going to be able to maintain this? Am I going to be able to eat, mostly fish, veggies, eat a relatively healthy diet with a lot of fiber and everything? Can I maintain this long term? Because again, if I can't, maybe I just have to be give me the statin. Let me have the burger, the fish and chips, the pizza, everything like that. So that's where we're currently at. Yeah. I don't know what else. Were there any other things I wanted to talk to you guys about before we get into the questions? I'm trying to think. Lots going on, guys. I am working on a few different courses. I'm probably going to start another podcast soon for Brazilian listeners who are beginners. So I'm doing this with a friend, Hugo Groom. And the idea there was that, I don't know, if you guys have ever learnt Italian, French, German, Swedish, Mandarin Chinese, and you've used podcasts, you probably come across the series of podcasts called Coffee Break and then the language, Coffee Break French. I used Coffee Break French when I was first learning French. Go figure, right? Yeah, I was using Coffee Break French when I was first learning Mandarin Chinese. It didn't seem to help very much. So I was using that and I found it really interesting. The guy on there is Scottish and he's obviously a native English speaker. I think with French at least, he was learning French. I think he may have even taught French. So he could speak French really well. But he would also have a French guy on the podcast and they would speak mostly in English, at least in the early seasons, and then talk a little bit here and there about French phrases, vocab, how you might ask for directions, and then have some interesting stuff later on in the podcast, like, say, a woman reading a letter that she'd written to her daughter, and then in the next episode, the daughter would write a response to her mother, and it would be, really cool study material. But it was aimed at beginners, so people who obviously didn't speak enough French to listen to the podcast Français Authentique, authentic French that I'm always ranting about, where it's all in French all the time. He speaks pretty clearly and slowly so you can understand, but that's kind of, it's a big jump if you're a beginner. So anyway, I was thinking it'd be kind of cool as an excuse to make sure I was practicing my Portuguese on a regular basis to pair up with someone like Hugo, who some of you will probably know. Some of you probably even found me through Hugo because we've done a few lives together and I've interviewed him on the podcast before. In fact, Hugo Groom, Aussie English. Let me search this. What episode number is it? 529, a Brazilian bloke born in an Aussie body. So Hugo's a really cool guy where he's just obsessed with Brazil, with Portuguese, with the culture, the music, the food. He's just a really, really authentic and awesome dude, and has really dived in culturally, but has done so from Australia. So he's a fellow Aussie like me. So I thought it would be really cool to create a podcast teaching English in Portuguese to Brazilians and people from Portugal if they're interested too, obviously. You know, we're not going to filter you out. God, I'm having a lot of brain farts today. Yeah, so I thought it would be cool to pair up with him and use it as an excuse to speak Portuguese on a regular basis. So we'd be teaching bits and pieces in English, but in Portuguese. Well, bits and pieces of English in Portuguese. And turning those into potentially courses and everything, gradually making them more and more advanced until the point where they can just switch straight over to Aussie English. But it would be the idea of talking about, you know, maybe creating lessons like Coffee Break French, where we talk about how to order food and then we give some examples and, you know, exercises and everything like that in there, and it's kind of all written and planned out. But then other episodes where we can just chat about Australian culture, dating, cultural differences between Brazil and Australia, you know, all the other sort of more, the deeper stuff that Brazilians quite often want to know before they come to Australia. So that's what I'm sort of currently working on in the background. That's potentially going to happen in the next month or so. We'll get started with that. Just have to plan it out. And as I've asked you on Instagram, we're thinking about a name for the podcast. And again, it was that sort of tough thing of Brazilians have a really good sense of humor, the ones that I've met at least. And they're kind of, you know, they love joking around. So I think that's sort of zoeira. That's the word for, like, you know, being a bit of a prankster, jokester, right? They kind of have that attitude. So we weren't sure whether we try and use something, you know, funny or, that would be a bit humorous, or if we do something a little more serious, you know, like, I don't know, Coffee Break English, you know, something, learn Australian English. But I think we've landed on Australia de Verdade. So that is effectively the authentic, real Australia, right? So I think that seems like it'll be the name we'll go with, Australia de Verdade. And yeah, I guess stay tuned for that. Any of you guys who are listening to this probably won't need to listen to this podcast if you are Brazilians and obviously Portuguese speakers. But if you know people who are learning English, wanting to come to Australia, wanting to learn more about Australia, for whatever reason, they're curious about the country, the culture, the language, everything like that, this will be a podcast for you to share with them so that they can get ready and improve their English before coming here. So stay tuned for that. What else is going on? You know what? Let's just get into some of these questions. I will save the other stuff for next time. Now, there was one really good question that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to try and find it so I can give a little shout out to the person who asked, because, you know, it was a really good question. So I'm just flicking through here. I take photos, I take screenshots of all of the questions that come in. Okay, so this is from Sarah, and she said, what is your advice to have a happy marriage? What is your advice to have a happy marriage? And I kind of went on a bit of a tangent, bit of a rant on Instagram, although, you know, it's pretty limited in terms of how long I could talk about this thing when responding to these questions. I get about 15 seconds. One more sip. Yeah, so what is required? I guess to be fair, as a disclaimer, I am still in the early days of having a happy marriage. So I've only been married for 3 years. I've been in a relationship with my wife for about four and a bit. So I'm sure a lot of you listening have been together a hell of a lot longer than that, and will have your own ideas too about what a good marriage is. But here's my 2 cents, hence the name of the podcast. The first thing I think a lot of people fuck up and get wrong is mate selection. Right, and this is a biological term that is quite often used about, when referring to animals choosing a mate, right? So pairing up in order to reproduce, but it applies to humans as well. And I think a big issue, if we go to Google here and we type in divorce rate, we can have a look at Australia, see if there's a Overall, 3 in 5, that's 60%, Australian adults are married or partnered, followed by just over... Okay, that doesn't seem to be the stats I was after. What are the divorce rates? Jesus. Looking at the graph here, it spiked like hell in 1976. No fault divorce introduced. Okay, there you go. What do we got here stats wise? Divorces per 1,000 married men and women. Age specific divorce rates, married population. So it looks like it's averaging 10%. Not bad. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. I think from what I've read, how many people get divorced in the US? People are always quoting that in US it's like 50%. I don't want to know the actual number. I want to know the actual percentage. Maybe I'm not going to be able to find this in time. Sorry, guys. I hope you don't mind me chatting whilst I say, almost 50% of all marriages in the US will end in divorce or separation. Okay, shit. There you go. Who was this done by? WF Lawyers. Okay. Far out. Okay. So is Australia on that graph? No. Russia is right at the front there. Another thing that blows my mind about Russia. Interesting. Okay, so Australia's not even on there. What else have we got? Let's see if I type in Australia, if I get a graph here to see how we compare to the US. It doesn't look like there's any graph here with any information about it. All right, anyway. So, yeah, in the US, imagine Australia's America and we have the same stats. Over 50% of marriages end in divorce. And I think a big reason a big reason this happens is because people don't mate select well. They don't think about it. It's like one of the most, if not the most important thing you will ever do in your life is marry someone, is commit to living with, reproducing with, sharing a house, sharing finances, all of that sort of stuff. You are doing it with another human being. So it's you're no longer you on your own with no responsibilities, right? And I think this is the issue. We grow up and we kind of have this romantic idea of what marriage is. And I think it's especially fed to women where they think all about their wedding, what it's going to be like, the honeymoon, having children, having a family, having a very attractive husband, having a husband who makes a lot of money, having, an easy lifestyle, all those sorts of bells and whistles, the extra good stuff that's sort of around the edges, but they never really think about, or at least, from my personal experience, I never hear women really talking about landing, marrying a really solid human being first and foremost. There's always kind of all this other stuff that comes up first. And, men, it's exactly the same. It's not just women. I'm not trying to target women here. Men are exactly the same, just, I guess, different criteria. Again, they're after the attractiveness, women who are young, blah, 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 blah. The issue here is I think a lot of people end up pairing up. They mate select. They choose their partner based on a lot of these superficial criteria. How attractive are they? How much money do they make? Are they younger than me? Do they have big boobs? Has he got a sports car? All this kind of superficial shit that ultimately you get bored with or you get over pretty quickly once you're married. And they don't pay enough attention to how well do you connect with this other human being? How well do you bond with this other human being? Do you talk about things? Is the communication there? Do you have shared values, shared ambitions, shared goals in life? I think a lot of the time, people don't even talk about this shit. And it just blows my mind. There are quite a few people I know who are married. And, one of my best friends, for example, I won't name him, but he's just constantly ranting to me about how horrible his wife is. And yet, when I say, do you bring up these issues? Do you talk about this stuff with her? Do you try and resolve these problems for the sake of your 2 children? Everything like that. He's like, no, she's just a bitch. It would never work, right? And I'm like, fuck me, man. How can you're creating your own hell. Like literally because you are trying to avoid short-term pain of having that discussion with someone of being like, hey, you did this thing that really affected me and it pissed me off. It made me angry for whatever reason. I don't want to be angry at you. I want us to be able to communicate. How do we resolve this issue? I'm sure I've also done things that have pissed you off. Can we talk about these things and then move forward? And I think that's sort of the big issue. It's almost a rarer thing, I feel, that married couples and even people who've been in a relationship for a long time have that kind of communication, that they can share their doubts, their fears, their problems, their issues with their partner, and whether or not, they get angry with one another, they, swear at each other, all of that sort of stuff, as long as they can get past that and then solve the actual problem that's there and move forward. I think there are so many people who just never deal with that, never face it, and they just ignore it. And so to me, it's like if you choose to marry someone and they behave like that, what the hell are you doing in terms of why would you marry someone who's a horrible person? They may be good looking. They may have a lot of money. They may be popular. They may, be really fit. They may be a good dad. But if you can't communicate with them at the end of the day and they don't respect you enough to want to communicate with you to resolve issues that come up, I think that is the real problem, at the end of the day. Because then your bond is effectively eroded or eroding, right? It's either completely disappeared and you guys are just people who live together with children now and maybe occasionally have sex. Maybe you don't at all. Otherwise, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And so, again, I was saying to my mate, you need to sort this shit out for the sake of your kids and for the sake of yourself, right? Because you're creating your own hell where every single day you wake up and you're scared, you're annoyed, you're walking on eggshells, you're living in this constant stress, fight or flight mode of what's she gonna get angry about today. And as a result of being like that, you're building up all this resentment towards her and not actually communicating with her to try and resolve these issues, move past them, and develop a happy marriage and keep it going. So I've sort of gone off on a tangent here, but I think that is the key thing to a happy marriage. It's communication, constant communication. And I'm not perfect. My wife and I were having a fight even today. I get angry at my kids at times because they'll be doing something dumb, like whining. Noah was whining this morning and then started crying because he didn't get what he wanted. I think he wanted to be in the pram when we were walking home, but we'd put shopping in there. Joanna was in the pram as well, and it was too heavy for my wife to push. And because he sits at the very front of the pram, it makes it really hard to maneuver. And so I was like, no, you're walking with me. Tough love. I was like, hold my hand. I'll carry you if you need, but we're walking. And he just lost it. He absolutely fucking lost it in, the car park. And when we were trying to walk, he kept turning around to try and talk to Kel, or get her sympathy, elicit her sympathy, so she'd put him in the pram. And then he tripped over backwards and hit his head on the ground and lost it even more. And I kind of, at that point, I was so stressed out and annoyed that I kind of snapped at him and was just like, Noah, you idiot, like pay attention to what you're doing. You just flipped around and then fell backwards onto the concrete. And that's my bad. I shouldn't have lost my temper, but I did. And then my wife lost it at me. She was like, why are you speaking to him this way? Don't be horrible, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we ended up having a tiff there. But the thing is, once we got home, I think I walked home ahead of everyone and was just like, having a sulk. But as soon as we get home, we talk about it. And by that point, I'm at that point of just being like, you know what? I'm sorry. I fucked up. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have spoken to Noah like that. I shouldn't have got angry with him. I understand he's fucking 2.5 years old. He's not an adult. It's my fault and I'm sorry for getting annoyed at you. And then she was like, I'm sorry for getting annoyed at you. So it's that kind of thing with communication. You can get angry. You can have your little problems. You can have your arguments. But then afterwards, I think this is the thing that I've heard from, I think it was Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him, whether you like him or not. There was one of his lectures where he was talking about never going to bed angry with your partner. So I try and live by that rule in order to maintain a happy marriage. And it's hard at first if you're used to holding a grudge and getting annoyed with people, but pretty quickly it gets to the point of it being hard to go to sleep whilst you're angry because you just feel bad. So now we're in a habit of, if we've had a problem throughout the day, if we've had an argument about something, if we've had a tiff, if we've had a little hissy fit, we always sort it out before going to sleep, because then you wake up in the morning and it's a new day. And you don't have all this baggage from the previous day hanging over you of, oh, she fucking did this, or he did this, blah, 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 and I'm still pissed off, because ultimately that doesn't help anyone. So, yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on a happy marriage. The other thing is, like, the amount of people who cheat on their partners just fucking blows my mind. Like, it literally blows my mind how many people cheat on their partners. And I think that's the other thing too. It's realizing once you're in a marriage, you know, you're going to be attracted to other people. You know, I'll put my hand up. You know, I walk around almost every day. You see someone who's attractive. You know, it's not like you get married and you no longer have the ability to find other human beings attractive. But the amount of people who actually act on that feeling, or allow feelings to develop with a colleague, another friend, to the point that you're jeopardizing the relationship you have with your partner, and then, say, getting confused, who are you in love with, or even falling in love with another person. The amount of times that happens, that as well, I think, contributes a shitload to people having bad marriages or unhappy marriages. It's that consumerism in the sexual marketplace, right? In the marketplace of human beings, where today we're in such a kind of consumerist world where we consume. We want a new iPhone, new computer, new car. We upgrade. We buy new clothes, and then we throw it out within a month or so, and we buy some more shit, and we get this and we get that, and we think that this is what living a good life is. And unfortunately, I think as a result of, you know, getting into that mindset with products, with things around you, with always needing something new, it ties in with partners as well, and it doesn't stop. There's no kind of stiff barrier, big fence between consuming all these products and treating humans like things to be consumed, you know, which is an issue I had with one of my old housemates, where he was on Tinder all the time and almost every week would have 4 or 5 women that he just met on a date come home, you know, and then the next night it'd be a different woman, and the next night it'd be a different woman. And I was always like, dude, one, you're sort of using these women as if they're things you bought at Woolworths, you know, and you just sort of consume them and throw them away. And 2, what's this doing to you personally, right? You're damaging yourself romantically. I feel like you're going to affect the ability that you have to develop a really deep bond and relationship with another human being if you're sleeping with a new human every single night, or every second night, every single year, right? I mean, he racked up probably 200 girls within 2 years. I remember, like, there was just always someone new at the house. I'd wake up and be like, who the fuck are you? Like, he was just trying to have breakfast in the lounge room, and there would be another woman walk through, and I'd just be like, you got to be kidding me, man. How many people have come over this month? So I think that's the issue too, that people, they almost get pre-programmed to subconsciously be looking for the next best thing, and then switch to that thing when it happens. And this may happen in marriage. This may happen before you get married. It definitely happens when you're dating. And it's almost excusable when you're dating someone, right? Or at least on the dating scene, that obviously if you're just starting to meet people and get an idea of what you're after, then you may, what would you say, trade up. So, you know, you're dating someone, you're like, well, we sort of get along. And then you start dating someone else, or going on a date with someone, getting to know them, and you're like, holy shit, I like this person way better. They're much more attractive. They're, you know, richer. They're nicer. They're funnier, whatever it is, and you end up trading up. The only problem is that you kind of need to know that door is closed once you're married. You know, it's done. It's gone. There's no, I'll stay in this marriage. I'll have children with this person. I'll buy a house with this person. But if someone more attractive, richer, sexier, you know, whatever, nicer comes along, I'll just switch and, you know, boom, I move on, divorce. So I think that's the thing too. A happy marriage is having your head in the game and being like, I'm working on this thing like a strategy game. right? I'm trying to make this thing, this relationship, this family as good as it can be, and it's the priority. So you have to kind of give yourself up as an individual who gets to do whatever he, she wants as a person, no matter what, and always put the other person and your relationship and potentially, obviously, your children, if you have them, ahead of that, and think about your decisions. Is me finding other people attractive and then acting on that going to have a detrimental effect on my relationship with my wife? Yes. Is it going to affect my children if I behave that way and end up cheating on my wife? That's the thing for me, at least, that prevents me ever behaving like that, ever cheating on my partner. It's one thing honor-wise that I would be humiliated. My parents would disown me. Like my family would see me as a piece of shit if I ever behaved that way towards my wife. My wife would obviously hate me and probably never take me back. But first and foremost, what would my children think of me? And what would their home be like if I ever did that and jeopardized the home that they have with my wife, in our family? So it's putting the relationship, it's putting the marriage, it's putting your children, your family, everything first before you get to do things like, any of those sorts of choices that would just affect you first and foremost, that you want. So I don't know. That's sort of my 2 cents on a happy marriage. You guys let me know if you disagree with me. Have I missed anything? What do you reckon? What makes a happy marriage? I think that's really it. When you're dating, and girls, you guys on the single scene, like, please, for the love of God, do your due diligence. You have so much freedom right now. Please find the right person for you and don't rush into it. There are so many people that I also know who got married, in a rush straight away. And then only later do they really discover the person and their personality, the person they've got married to and what they're actually like. And I think this sort of is a reason that there's a lot of domestic violence. It's sort of another story to go down. But it's people not doing their due diligence and really getting to know the person that they're getting into bed with, pun intended, right? That they're going to partner up with. We do all this stuff, right? When you're buying a car, unless it's me buying the BMW, you should take it somewhere where it gets inspected by other people, right? You bring your friends along. You get your friends to check the car out. You drive the car. You do all of these things where you sort of take your time and you're like, shit, this is a considerable investment. It's a lot of money. I'm taking all this time and energy to purchase this thing that is going to be around for a very long time. We put so much effort into those sorts of decisions, but it's interesting that I think a lot of people don't do that when it comes to partners, girlfriends, boyfriends, fiancés, and marriage. They don't put the same kind of lens over the top of their relationship and everything and try and work these things out and really consider things, right? Is this person really... they may be really attractive, really wealthy, really well off, even a nice person, but are they going to be a good parent? I want children. Do they want children? I want to live close to my parents. Do they want to do that? I want to have this kind of lifestyle. Is that what they want? It's easy to get kind of caught up initially in the what do you call it? The honeymoon stage, where you're really enjoying just being around the other person. It's exciting, it's new, but you have to kind of stretch that out and really then work out, are we a good fit once that initial honeymoon period's worn off? Because if not, you're setting yourself up for failure. And yeah, it's crazy. We're looking for a house right now, and I'm doing all of this research into how to interact with real estate agents, which suburbs are going to be the best to buy in for young families, what to look for when you're inspecting a house, the kinds of people you need to hire to go and check the house out, the conveyancers, the pest inspectors, how to go to an auction, how to behave at an auction, when to walk away. All of these things, like I'm on the internet for hours and hours and hours a week at the moment, trying to understand more about how to make good, educated decisions when it comes to buying a house. But I think very few people do that when it comes to relationships. They kind of just wing it and think, I know best. So another thing is go down the rabbit hole of getting on YouTube, listening to podcasts, reading books about what a good relationship is, how to find a good partner, at least just to educate yourself. You don't even necessarily have to follow the advice, but the fact that you've gone out of your way to try and think about these things, to consider these things, is huge, right? And it's going to make a massive difference for you. And it's almost like this is the most important decision you will ever make if you're thinking about marrying someone. This is a lifetime of literally, well, metaphorically being shackled at the ankles with another human being. So you better bloody hope that the decision you make, the human being that is going to be in your house, in your bed, raising your children, is a good human being. That's probably enough. That's probably enough for today, guys. Let me know what you reckon. Am I just full of shit, or do you agree with what I'm saying regarding a happy marriage and how important it is to just choose the right person and be willing to walk away from the wrong person? I should have probably pointed out that. It's like buying the house, right? A lot of what they emphasize at the moment is the importance of knowing when you're at your limit or when it's a bad decision and you're making an emotional decision. If you're at an auction and the price gets out of your range, but you follow it because you're emotionally invested and really set on having this house, the same thing I think applies to a relationship with someone, because then it becomes more about, I want the relationship, I want the things the relationship brings, but you're not thinking about what is actually there in terms of connection with this other human being, and does it actually work well? Anyway, that's about an hour. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, guys. Let me know what you think. Send me an email again at pete@aussieenglish.com.au. And if you have certain questions you would like to ask me to talk about on these podcast episodes, fire away, okay? Send me them through and I will do my best to have a rant about them and give you my 2 cents. Anyway, thanks for joining me, guys, and I will see you next time. Cheers!